I was standing in the middle of a luxurious, crystal chandelier ballroom in downtown Chicago, seething with absolute rage as my father stood at the podium. He was delivering an emotional speech to hundreds of wealthy guests about how deeply proud he was of his two highly successful daughters. To the crowd, he looked like the ultimate patriarchal success story. To me, he was a monster. 5 years ago, when severe anxiety broke me and I dropped out of college, this exact man looked at me with pure disgust and told me I was no longer his daughter. My mother called me a genetic disgrace, gave me 7 days to pack my bags, and completely threw me onto the streets without a single dollar. For 5 years, they erased my existence. Yet here they were, publicly hijacking my hard-earned corporate success to boost their own social status, while privately plotting with their lawyers behind closed doors to legally steal my inheritance. Before I reveal how I used my smartphone to record their secret plot and completely crashed my sister's elite law school celebration, I have a quick question for you. Where are you watching this video from right now? Let me know down in the comments. I love reading where our audience is tuning in from. Now, let's go back to the night my life was entirely turned to ash. My name is Vicki. I grew up in a world where human worth was measured exclusively by corporate titles, net worth, and country club appearances. My parents were prominent, highly influential figures in the elite Chicago business circuit. They didn't view children as human beings, they viewed us as public relations assets. My younger sister, Lily, was their undisputed golden child. At 23, she was pristine, hyper-competitive, and smoothly cruising on a track to become a top-tier corporate defense attorney. I, on the other hand, was the creative misfit. I was a 28-year-old struggling student passionate about avant-garde fashion design, a field my mother aggressively sneered at, calling it a pathetic waste of time. The psychological weight of their conditional affection was crushing. They compared me to Lily at every single family dinner, chipping away at my self-esteem until my grades slipped and I fell into a severe, paralyzing wave of clinical depression. When the mental exhaustion forced me to withdraw from my classes, my family's response wasn't care, it was total execution. My mother shrieked at me for hours, claiming my academic failure would permanently ruin their social standing. My father officially disowned me on the spot, and Lily stood silently in the corner of the room, a triumphant smirk plastered across her face as she watched my total exile. They cut off all financial safety nets and gave me a single week to disappear. I fell into absolute survival mode. I spent months couch surfing at friends' apartments, taking any grueling job available just to keep food in my throat. I spent my days waitressing and working retail, and my nights cleaning corporate office buildings until my hands bled. It was the absolute lowest pit of my life, but inside that darkness, my despair mutated into an ironclad determination. In the quiet hours of the night, I used free online tutorials to master highly advanced, industry-standard fashion design software. I meticulously constructed a digital portfolio from scratch, reaching out to micro brands across the country and offering to design their seasonal collections for pennies just to get my name on a manufacturing tag. Slowly, the momentum shifted. I moved from couch surfing into a cramped studio, then into a spacious loft, eventually graduating from a lone freelancer to founding my very own independent fashion design agency. 5 years passed. I had completely revolutionized my life. Building an elite roster of national clients. I had entirely cut off the toxic cancer of my family line, changing my phone number, altering my circles, and moving to a completely different sector of Chicago. Then, an old high school acquaintance forwarded me a digital invitation to Lily's law school graduation gala. My immediate instinct was to delete it. But as I stared at their pristine family names printed on the digital card, a cold, calculative urge took over. I didn't want their love, but I damn sure wanted them to see exactly what I had built without a single crumb of their old money support. On the night of the gala, I stepped out of a private car wearing a jaw-dropping, crimson silk gown that I had personally designed and tailored. Looking in the mirror, I didn't see the broken dropout they had thrown into the gutter. I saw a fierce, highly successful corporate executive. The venue was blindingly opulent, packed with judges, politicians, and high society executives. Lily stood at the center of the room in a white silk gown, looking every bit the pristine graduate, flanked by our beaming parents. I purposely arrived late, blending into the crowd near the bar. While ordering, a familiar voice drifted from behind me. Vicki, is that truly you? I turned to find Professor Thompson, my favorite academic advisor from my early college days, who had recently transitioned to teaching at the law school. Lily had been one of his star pupils. When he asked what had become of my fashion career after I left the university, I gave him a brief, transparent summary of my agency's rapid growth. His face lit up with genuine professional respect. I knew it, he beamed. Your raw conceptual talent was always undeniable, Vicki. I am incredibly proud of you. Moving away from the bar, I slipped through the crowd like a ghost. No one recognized the polished woman I had become. That's when I overheard my mother speaking to a prominent group of local socialites. Oh, we are simply overjoyed, she purred, sipping her champagne. Lily is destined for a partnership at a top firm. And our eldest daughter, Vicki, is also an absolute titan in the business world. She's currently managing massive corporate operations overseas, which is why she sadly couldn't join our celebration tonight. I froze, my blood boiling. They were actively using my real-world success to cover up their domestic cruelty, inventing an international corporate narrative just to protect their fragile public image. Determined to find out just how deep their deception ran, I quietly trailed Lily as she excused herself to a private, velvet-lined VIP room down the hall. She was on a speakerphone call with our mother. Slinking near the heavy oak door, I pressed record on my smartphone as Lily's voice drifted through the gap. Don't worry, Mom, Lily laughed into the phone. The crowd completely swallowed the overseas business story. Nobody is asking questions. Now, regarding Vicki's portion of grandmother's estate trust fund, I already consulted with our family asset attorney. Because she has been completely out of contact for 5 consecutive years, we can legally file a motion of abandonment and absorb her entire share into my personal account. My jaw tightened. They weren't just exploiting my reputation, they were actively committing legacy fraud to strip me of my rightful inheritance. Seconds later, a chime echoed through the venue, signaling my father taking the main stage microphone. He began booming out his rehearsed speech about family unity, legacy, and how both of his daughters were beautifully carving their marks into the world. I didn't wait for him to finish. I stepped directly out of the shadows, walking straight down the center aisle of the ballroom, the heels of my shoes clicking sharply against the marble. I'm right here, Dad, my voice rang out, clear and piercing, cutting completely through the microphone system. The entire ballroom fell into a suffocating, breathless silence. Hundreds of heads swiveled instantly. My parents' faces drained of all color, turning in dynamic, ashen pale. Lily looked as if she had just seen a phantom. Professor Thompson and Dr. Harris, the influential dean of the law school, stood just feet away, staring in absolute shock. Let's stop the performance, I continued, looking my father dead in the eye. You haven't had an overseas daughter for 5 years. You disowned me, stripped my resources, and left me completely homeless because I chose art over a law degree. You abandoned me when my mental health was fracturing, yet tonight you are using my hard-earned market success to inflate your own fragile egos. My father, desperate to maintain control in front of his board members, gripped the podium. You made your own rebellious choices, Vicki. You threw away your future, and we simply enacted tough love. Tough love, I barked back, turning my screen toward the front row where the dean was standing. Is it also tough love to forge legal documents? Dr. Harris, my family has been publicly running a narrative that I am working abroad, while privately coordinating with their lawyers to fraudulently liquidate my grandmother's trust fund under the guise that I am a missing person. I have the entire audio metadata recorded right here on my device, captured less than 10 minutes ago in the VIP hall. Dr. Harris' expression turned completely rigid. He looked at my parents with profound professional disgust. Henry, Elizabeth, if these allegations of financial fraud and identity manipulation are accurate, this is a severe legal crisis. This behavior is entirely unacceptable. My mother frantically stepped forward, her voice trembling as she tried to salvage her social standing. Vicki has always been an unstable, deeply difficult child. We tried to provide her with endless guidance, but she completely rejected our family. Right on cue, the heavy double doors of the ballroom swung open. My corporate business partner, Alex, walked in flanked by our legal counsel. He pulled up a high-end tablet, casting our agency's verified financial audits directly onto the venue's presentation screens. "Let's look at the actual numbers, shall we?" Alex announced to the elite crowd. "This is Vicki's national fashion design agency. Founded 3 years ago, we currently employ over 20 full-time staff members, and our audited annual revenue for the past fiscal year officially surpassed $3 million. She built this commercial empire out of absolute nothingness, while sleeping on floors, without a single cent from the individuals standing on that stage." The collective gasp from the high society audience was deafening. My parents were completely paralyzed with public humiliation, their faces bright red, while Lily looked down at the floor, her law career flashing before her eyes. I walked right up to the stage, looking down at the people who had discarded me. "Here is how this evening ends," I whispered with absolute authority. "You are going to sign a comprehensive, immediate waiver relinquishing every single claim to my grandmother's trust fund. You will permanently cease using my name, my brand, or my success to grease your social wheels. If your legal team hesitates for even a second, I will hand this forensic audio file directly to the district attorney and blast the unedited recording to every single media outlet and corporate client in your entire network." My father looked around the room, realizing his social capital had completely evaporated. He had zero leverage. Following an agonizing, heavy silence, he quietly bowed his head and agreed to my terms. Within 48 hours, inside a secure legal office, the paperwork was finalized, and my grandmother's full inheritance was securely transferred into my corporate holding accounts. The capital was substantial, but the true victory was the absolute, beautiful severing of their psychological chains. The social blowback completely demolished my parents' carefully curated world. Their elite circles entirely distanced themselves to avoid the stench of the financial scandal, and my father's commercial partnerships rapidly dissolved. Lily's reputation was so severely tarnished by the exposure of the trust fund plot that she was completely blacklisted from every top-tier firm in the city. As for me, my agency continues to dominate the fashion landscape. I have finally learned the ultimate truth: you do not need the validation of the people who broke you to build a beautiful life. I have cultivated a real family out of my brilliant friends, my loyal colleagues, and my own unshakable resilience. I am Vicki, I am entirely independent, and I will never let anyone else dictate my worth again.